Peace and love, peace and love. It's Quasiel just coming to you all again. With some quick information, due to some of the naivety that's presented here in North America, due to the Spanish Inquisition for world conquest, we want to reveal some documents that may be unknown by the masses, and and some of them may not be. So we just want to go into share some knowledge with one another, as that's what our ancestors did. Communication and social engineering is part of the albinos or the transitions creed or bulla, church bulla for world conquest. And later I'll do a video about the different definitions and the terms that they use to manipulate masses, and we'll get into that maybe in a future video. So right now we're just gonna go over a quick document, the Willie Lynch letter, the making of a slave. I know some people say Willie Lynch is not real, it wasn't a human, but all that's okay. You know, that's not the argument. What we're dealing with is the information embodied within the paper itself, and not necessarily, it doesn't even matter if he was a real human or not. Why does that? After you decide that he's not, then what? The reality is that this is printed on black and white, and that is informational purposes only. And so this is for informational purposes only, to deal with the art of war. It has nothing to do if he was real or not. We leave that for babies to talk and debate and, and do all of that. So other documents that's lost world history is the Christian Black Codes of 1724, the King Alfred Plan, Rex 84, the Antikythera Divina, the Doctrine of Discovery, etc. These are war instruments that was opposed upon the Aboriginals of the Al Morocs, contemporarily called North America. So let's begin. The Willie Lynch letter. I like to say the Willie Lynch Formula, but the paper says the Willie Lynch letter. And just look at the Willie Lynch. Look at it as a group of people coming together to devise a recipe. You know what I mean? Like if you wanted to cook the best cake, you're gonna go through trial and error. You're gonna bake cakes. Some cakes are not gonna be fluffy enough. You didn't put enough egg in it, milk. You didn't cook it at the right temperature. You took it out too early. So look at it like that. When you think of the Willie Lynch letter, look at it as a process of a group of people who learned a tactic over time, and not just one person coming to a table writing this down, so you can understand what it is and what it is not. And so this was a device, even though it's paper, it's just paper, it's a device. And the reason that it's a device is because it's passed down generation after generation. And this is your silent weapons of warfare to attack a people where they don't even know that they're being attacked. And until that becomes reality, you'll be left debating with people. And so on the strategic side, that's why I present the Willie Lynch formula. So let's read it. It's probably a quick read, maybe 10 minutes or so. I'll stop and kind of expound where I see is needed. So you got the Willie Lynch formula, the making of a slave. This speech was delivered by Willie Lynch. Remember, we're classifying Willie Lynch as an idea of collective people. Whoever said it is fine. Whoever typed it, that's cool. But the idea of how it came about was a presentation or presentment that birthed out of the Antikythera Divina, which is the church boiler from Rome for world conquest. So this is a limb from the tree. And so this itself is not the problem, but understanding the whole tree, you want to learn about the limbs and also the leaves. So that's what this is about. This speech was delivered by Willie Lynch on the bank of James River in the colony of Virginia, 1712. Lynch was a British, so just know that, slave owner in the West Indies. He was invited to the colony of Virginia in 1712 to teach his methods to slave owners. The term lynching is derived from his last name. December 25th, 1712. So this was presented around what people celebrate today as Christmas. But knowing that Christmas is rooted in really your ancient culture, but a lot of people think it's about Santa Claus. And so those are our misconceptions, and we pass this on to the children, but wanting the benefit of success later on. And so truth sets you free, and other things don't. It says, I greet you here on the bank of James River in the year of our Lord. So when we just looking at this, it says, I greet you. Who? Let's analyze. Who is I? That's the British guy, or whatever British guy. I greet you on the bank of James River. So a Briton is greeting other people in the year of our Lord. He's not talking about you. But you can think he is, but it's clear that it's not. And so once we learn how to analyze, instead of just reading and say we read it, it's about comprehending it and being able being able to regurgitate it. A lot of people can't regurgitate. They just sound like a broken record. And you have to become useful with your words so that you can use it as a sword. Joshua, falsely called Jesus, said, I come not to bring peace, but a sword. We've forgotten our words are sword, so we use them and we say whatever we choose, but suffer the cause of it. It says, I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord, 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me here. You see how they're working together? They're not debating saying it didn't work. That's not how nothing works. But we think it does. They just came together to take the fish and leave the bone so they can capitalize. I am here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies. The West Indies is in the East, just to clear up the confusion. When you hear West Indies, that's in the East for its geography. Where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods for controls of slaves. So just from the first paragraph, why do people think slavery had something to do with whips and chains? Why is that even talked about? It's not. So it's kind of like if you leave a dog or something in a cage for months and months at the time, when you let that dog come out of the cage, he feels as if you've done something for him. But because he's forgotten that he didn't supposed to be in the cage in the first place. And so we got used to chains and not being able to vote, not being able to do this for so long. Once it was given to us, we felt like we advanced. This is the art of war, not war. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program was implemented. So it said ancient Rome. So that shows you there's a dispute between France, British, England, etc. They have their mishaps as well as we do. But the problem is we debate without moving forward. They see that they have their misgivings and they're not able to agree on everything because you just read it. But they're able to move. This was in 1712. So analyze it and think about what you think about. A lot of people just thinking, but you have to think about your thoughts because maybe your thoughts were intruded by your spiritual enemy. And so if he entered in and gave you false thoughts and you didn't analyze them and you accepted them as truth, that's your fault. Think about what you think about. and be sincere. As our boat sailed south on the James River, named for our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish, he just told you it's just a version. The King James version. I mean, that's what analyzing does. I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. Your problem is not unique. You're suffering about bills. You're paying taxes. Your health is not where you want it to be. You're not making as much as you thought you would be making. Your problem is not unique. You see? While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its highways in great numbers, you are here using the tree. Go to Act 5, chapter 5, verse 30. You'll see that Jesus was hung in a tree, so you can see the point. This is over here in North America. They wasn't doing that over there. This is what analyzing does for you. Act chapter 5, verse 30. Go to the oldest book Bible that you can read. Don't look at the constructed. As time progresses, they keep reconstructing books to divert the movement. And there's but one movement. While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its highways in great numbers, you are here using the tree and rope on occasion. I caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple miles back. You are not only losing valuable stock by hangings, you are also having uprising. Slaves are running away. Your crops are sometimes left in the fields too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires. Your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. Moors, you know what the problems are. And if you don't, it's the school systems. It's the food that we eat, and it's the literature that we read, and it's the relationships for us, husband and wife. Those are our divine problems. So, gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I am not here to enumerate your problems. I am here to introduce you a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that installed correctly, it will control these slaves for at least 300 years, 2012. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves and make the differences bigger. You see what division is about? But our people normally talk division, just normally though. So this is the problem. And not dwelling in the past, but using the past as a map to see what's going on. You know, I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, among the Moors. I told some of them they're Negroes, black in color. I told some of them they were Indians. I told some of them they were Ethiopians. I told some of them they were Afro-Americans. You see? I use fear, distrust, and envy for control. These methods have worked on my modest plantations on the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple list of differences and think about them. On top of my list is age, but it's there only because it starts with an A. The second is color. You see, but people still thinking they colors, not knowing that that's part of their slavery, but supporting it. So this is how the Willie Lynch Formula prevailed from its inception. The Intercatera Divina, this is but a stem of the tree. And so that's why us Moors encourage reading, encourage analyzing to clear this stuff up. And the only way to clear it up is to see what happened to you. anytime a car wreck happens, they go back and look at what happened on the scene. They're not dwelling in the past. You got to go see what happened to know why this wreck happened. And only an idiot would say something different. And the problem is that we have people growing up calling themselves adults, but really idiots. And so let's take precaution to that so we know how to approach it, because these idiots are still our people. And so we got to thank for them as well. It says the second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, size of plantations, and status. What is your status? You see, you don't even know. On plantations. Is tall or short. Now that you have a lot of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust for them, for the benefit of them. Distrust is stronger than trust, and envy stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, you see, that's what school is. But we thinking that we miss concepts. So in order to receive an indoctrination means you have to be taught. Why are we sending our children to European psychological camps of enslavement and supporting it, but wanting the benefit of truth later on when the babies get older? You see the problem? Carry on and will become self-refueling and generating for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves. And let's look at that. He said you want to put against the old and the young, but also the young and the old. It's not the same meaning. The reason I wanted to expound on that briefly is because we would read past that as if it's just words. But upon analyzation, we see that it's a method for cooking the cake, but it may be another method for making the sugar. So, but it's all to make the cake. So the point is that they have formulas directed for the youth, and they have formulas directed for the old. But the point of each device being created to divide is specifically depending on your age. And that is the division. You must use the female versus the male and the male versus the female. You must also have the white servants and overseers distrust all blacks. So we thinking just because people marrying our husbands or marrying our wives that they caring or something about you. We don't know what war is, but not disputing all Europeans or British or albinos, etc. I'm just talking about what war is or the art of it. And so we validate how much people love us just because they're around us. And that's not naivety. Blacks, it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. Look at what the news does. When the Europeans tell us it's a virus, everybody just reacts to it. You see? But let somebody say something, declare your nationality, and they look like you. People walk over it. And this is the Willie Lynch revealed right now. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control, to use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. This is the foundation of it. So everything after that, it's okay if they feed you. If they feed you, if they give you programs to help because you can't pay your bills. Because the point is for you to trust only them. You see the point? If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful of each other. Thank you, gentlemen. So let's make a slave. See how predictable they thought you were and are, but not forevermore to be? Let us make a slave. Make a slave. You see? It was the interest and business of slaveholders to study human nature, and the slave nature in particular, with a view of practical results. I and many of them attained astonishing proficiency in this direction. They had not to deal with earth, wood, and stone, but with men, and by every regard they had their own safety and prosperity. They needed to know the material on which they were to work. Conscious of the injustice and wrong, they were every hour perpetuating and knowing what they themselves would do. Were they the victims of such wrong? They were constantly looking for the first signs of the dreaded retribution. They watched, therefore, with skilled and practiced eyes, and learned to read with great accuracy the state of mind and heart of the slave through his sable face, unusual sobriety, apparent abstractions, sullenness, and indifferences indeed. Any mood out of the common was afforded ground for suspicion and inquiry. Let us make a slave. What do you need? First of all, we need a black nigger man, a pregnant nigger woman, and her baby nigger boy. What is the science of Islam in a sense? Mother, father, and child. Christianity is a war on yourself. And because it's Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. That's what they told you. But they were attacking the Father, the Son, and the child, though. You see the point? It's all about division. And for you to trust what they're talking about while you're suffering. Second, we will use the same basic principle that we use breaking a horse. You see, you're looked at as animals, but upholding it because you can vote, because you can get a job, because you can have a home that you have to forever pay taxes on. And we begin to be happy for those things because they've kept you in the cage for so long. Well, I'm here to tell you, the cage is of the minds. So let's break out of that cage. Let's not talk about whips and chains anymore. What we do with the horses is that we break them from one form of life to another. That is, we reduce them from their natural state in nature. Whereas nature provides them with the natural capacity to take care of their offspring. But now we got to go get pills and stuff. You see the problem? We'll rather give somebody some kind of pill to make them do something rather than fix something that we're doing, thinking that it's rooted in the child and not even knowing how to solve it without going to that person that has that pill. It says here, it'll work, but here are the side effects. But people act like they're smart. Whereas nature provides them with the natural capacity to take care of their offspring, we break that natural stream of independence from them and thereby create a dependent status so that we may be able to get from them useful production for our business and pleasure. The cardinal principles for making a Negro. For fear that our cultural generations may not understand the principles of breaking both of the beasts together, the nigger and the horse, we understand that short-range planning economics results in periodic economic chaos. You see how they're thinking about their generations that haven't came yet? Why aren't you? Why are you talking about just raising your children? Why are you just talking about just your family? And that's not even your culture. But you thought it was. But nobody else is thinking like that. They're coming up with plans for their generations that haven't even got here yet to keep you enslaved. but you're supporting it, asking for better. So that to avoid, we understand that short-range planning economics results in periodic economic chaos. So that to avoid turmoil in the economy, it requires us to have breadth and depth in long-range comprehensive planning, articulating both skills, sharp perceptions. We lay down the following principles for long-range comprehensive economic planning. Both horse and niggers is no good to the economy in the wild or natural state. They're saying wow to what benefits them. Both must be broken and tied together for orderly production, for orderly future. Special and particular attention must be paid to the female and the youngest offspring. But they turned the female to a ghost and taught you that. And it wasn't based in moral principles. It's just based in you believing it. But we're not really looking at people, what they were doing. I mean, we even go to church and drink another man's blood or symbolize that we're drinking another human's blood. That's what vampires do. But people are doing that in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, in the name of etc. They're drinking another man's blood, symbolizing that, teaching the babies, asking for better. You see? Both must be crossbred to produce a variety and division of labor. Both must be taught. You see why you got to go to school? And they say if you don't, you're an unfit parent. Do you see? Those with eyes, let them see. Both must be taught to respond to a peculiar new language, psychological and physical instruction, psychological and physical. Instruction of containment must be created for both. We hold these 6 cardinal principles as truth to be self-evident based upon the following discourse concerning the economics of the breaking and tying the horse and nigger together, and tying the nigger and horse together, all inclusive of the 6 principles laid down about. Note, neither principle alone will suffice for good economics. All principles must be employed for orderly good of the nation. Accordingly, both a wild horse and a wild or natural nigger is dangerous even if captured. You see why they had to get your mind? For they will have the tendency to seek their customary freedom, and in doing so might kill you in your sleep. You cannot rest, they cannot while you are awake, and are awake while you are asleep. They are dangerous near the family house, and it requires too much labor to watch them away from the house. Above all, you cannot get them to work in this natural state. Hence, both the horse and the nigger must be broken. This is breaking them from one form of mental life to another. Your whole form is different, but you're supporting that form, asking for better. Keep the body, take the mind. In other words, break the will to resist. Just pay your taxes. Don't figure out what you're supposed to do. Just pay it. Just pay other people to do what your birthright gives you in the first place, like traveling. Pay somebody to travel. Pay somebody to, pay somebody to do everything. Now the breaking process, but not paying for services. I'm talking about paying stuff that God gave you. You see, paying taxes on that. Above all, you cannot get them to work in this natural state. Hence, both the horse and the nigger must be broken. This is the breaking from one form of mental life to another. Keep the body, take the mind. In other words, break the will to resist. Now the breaking process is the same for both the horse and the nigger, only slightly varying in degrees. But as we said before, there is an art in long-range economic planning. You must keep your eye and thoughts on the female, because she'll raise other slaves, and the offspring of the horse and the nigger. A brief discourse in offspring development will shed light on the key to sound economic principles. Pay little attention to the generation of original breaking. You see? Pay little attention to people debating. Just let them suffer. Unless they choose to want to know. but concentrate on the future generations. Islam. Therefore, if you break the female mother, she will break the offspring in its early years of development. And when the offspring is old enough to work, she will deliver it up to you. You're 18 now. Go get a job. Should have been teaching them when they were 5. You see the point? For her normal female protective tendencies will have been lost in the original breaking process. For example, take the case of the wild stud horse, a female horse, and an already infant horse, and compare the breaking process with the 2 captured nigger males in their natural state. A pregnant nigger woman with her infant offspring, take the stud horse, break him for limited containment. Completely break the female horse until she becomes very gentle, whereas you or anybody can ride her in comfort. Breed the male and the stud until you have a desired offspring. Then you can turn the stud to freedom until you need him again. Train the female horse, whereby she will eat out of your hand, and she will turn and train the infant horse to eat out of your hands also. When it comes to breaking the uncivilized nigger, use the same process, but vary the degree and step up the pressure so as to do a complete reversal of the mind. A complete reversal of the mind. A complete reversal of the temple of Solomon, the soul of man. Completely break the female horse until she becomes very gentle, whereas you or anybody can ride her, so as to do a complete reversal of the mind. Take the meanest and most restless nigger, strip him of his clothes in front of the remaining male niggers, the female and the nigger infant. Tar and feather him. Tie each leg to a different horse faced in opposite directions. Set him afire and beat both horses to pull him apart in front of the remaining nigger. The next step is to take a bullwhip and beat the remaining nigger male to the point of death in front of the female and the infant. But don't kill him. Put the fear of God in him, you see, for he can be useful for future breeding. The breaking process of the African woman. Take the female and run a series of tests on her to see if she will submit to your desires willingly. Test her. And what is Islam? To submit to the will of Allah. So how are you submitting to Europeans? Test her in every way because she is the most important factor for good economics. If she shows any sign of resistance in submitting completely to the will of Europeans, do not hesitate to use the bullwhip on her to extract the last bit of resistance out of her. Take care not to kill her, for in doing so, you spoil good economics. When in complete submission, she will train her offsprings in the early years to submit to labor when they become of age. Now you're legal. You're able to go become a slave now. You see how it's maintained through morphology, morphing of words. Same point, but changing them for the benefit of other people. That's not you. Even your brothers and sisters have betrayed you. So the only way to fight back is to know the fight. If you don't know the fight, you'll just end up debating. Only. But not moving, not being useful though. Understanding is the best, you all. Therefore, we shall go deeper into this area of subject matter concerning what we have produced here in the breaking process of the female nigger. We have reversed the relationship. In her natural, uncivilized state, she will have a strong dependency on the uncivilized nigger male, and she will have a limited protective tendency towards her independent male offspring. You see? But now they're so protective over the males because it was a reversal. But they still like that though. But we don't see the point because it's the art of war. We reverse nature by burning and pulling a civilized nigger apart and bull-whipping the other to the point of death, all in her presence. By her being left alone, unprotected, with the male image destroyed, not the male, but the image created in the mind. The ordeal caused her to move from her psychological dependent state of a frozen independent state, because she had to be. Nothing in nature is independent. But you got females who like to think they are. In this frozen psychological state of independence, she will raise her male and female offspring in reverse roles. So she'll raise the female to be like she used to raise the male. You see? But thinking that this is normal in their natural sense. For fear of the young male's life, she will psychologically train him to be mentally weak and dependent, but physically strong, because she can become psychologically independent. Because she has become psychologically independent. She would train her female offspring to be psychologically independent. What have you got? You've got the nigger woman out front and the nigger man behind and scared. This is a perfect situation of sound sleep and economic. Before the breaking process, we had to be alert, on guards at all times. Now we can sleep soundly, for out of the frozen fear, his woman stands guard for us. He cannot get past her early slave molding process. He is a good tool, now ready to be tied to the horse at a tender age. By the time a nigger boy reaches the age of 16, he is soundly broken and ready for a long life of sound and efficient work and reproduction of a unit of good labor force. And that's what the mother's actually teaching you. Just go work and get your 401k and retire. But it sounds better that way, you see, but it's maintaining the same principle. You see, that is the art. He is a good tool. By the time a nigger boy reaches a unit of 16, okay, blah, 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 continually through the breaking of uncivilized savage nigger. Not saying you're actually a savage or a nigger, but this is how they talked about you. This is like a one-on-one conversation with British people in France and etc. This is how they were conversing. But not who you were, really. It's just you are what you answer to. Continually through the breaking of uncivilized savage nigger, by throwing the nigger female savage into a frozen psychological state of independence, by killing of the protective male image, and by creating a submissive, dependent mind of the nigger male, we have created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever. Unless a phenomenon occurs and reshifts the position of the male and female slaves, us Moors are that phenomenon. We show that what we mean by example. Take the case of two economic slave units and examine them closely. The nigger marriage. We breed two nigger males with two nigger females. Then we take the nigger males away from them and keep them moving and working. Say one nigger female bears a nigger female and the other bears a nigger male. Both nigger females being without influence of the nigger male image, frozen with an independent psychology, will raise her offspring into reverse positions. The one with the female offspring will teach her to be like herself, independent and negotiable. We negotiate with her, through her, by her. We negotiate her at will. The one with the nigger male offspring, she being frozen with a subconscious fear for his life, will raise him to be mentally dependent and weak. Just look at the males. They come from a woman. And you go look at them. But physically strong, in other words, body over mind. Now, in a few years, when these two offsprings become fertile for early production, we will mate and breed them and continue the cycle. This is good sound for long-range comprehensive planning. Warning, possible interloping negatives. Earlier, we talked about the non-economic good of the horse and the nigger in their wild natural state. We talked out of the principle of breaking and tying them together for orderly production. Furthermore, we talked about paying particular attention to the female savage and her offspring for orderly future planning. Then more recently, we stated that by reversing the positions of the male and female savages, we created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis unless a phenomenon occurs and reshifts the positions of the male and female savages. Our excerpts warned us about the possibility of this phenomenon, Islam. For they say that the mind has a strong drive to correct and recorrect itself over a period of time. If I can touch some substantial original historical base, and they advised us that the best way to deal with the phenomenon is to shave off the brute mental history and create a more... I'm going to read this, man. And this should eliminate most debates across North America, South America, and abroad to the rest of the planet. This is what the slavery was. Let's read it. It says, our experts warned us about the possibility of this phenomenon occurring. For they say that the mind, remember, man is mind. They waged war on your God. You see, by our Lord, you see, by Christendom. So let's analyze it. It says, our excerpts warned us about the possibility of this phenomenon occurring. For they say that the mind has a strong drive to reshift itself, to recorrect itself over a period of time. If I can touch some substantial original historical base, and they advised us the best way to deal with this phenomenon is to give false history through curriculums, to keep you thinking something that's not truth. Because the truth shall set you free. And don't tell me you knew the truth because you're not free. To shave off the brute mental history and create a multiplicity of phenomenon of illusions. Santa Claus, Christmas, Thanksgiving, the New Year, Christopher Columbus Day. To deal with the phenomenon is to shave off 4th of July. You see? Valentine's Day, Easter. Really, it's the Eastern Star. But it was all here. So that each illusion would twirl on its own orbit, meaning they gave you false narratives and called it history. They called it education, which means to train. So that each illusion would twirl on its own orbit, something similar to floating balls in a vacuum. This creation of multiplicity of phenomenon of illusions entails the principle of crossbreeding the nigger and the horse, as well as stated above, the purpose of which is to create a diversified division of labor, thereby creating different levels of labor. I'm a CEO, I'm a manager, I'm a team leader, I'm an employee, and everybody, depending on their status, their state of mind, appreciates one as if they were a CEO, as if they owned their own country. They appreciate it, in different values. We shall lay down the following definition, terms for future generations. Orbiting cycle means a thing turning in a given path. Axis means upon or around which a body turns. Phenomenon means something or beyond ordinary conception and inspires awe and wonder. Multiplicity means a great number. Sphere means a globe. Crossbreeding a horse means taking a horse and breeding it with an ass, and you'll get a dumb, backward ass, long-headed mule that is not reproductive nor productive by itself. Crossbreeding niggers means taking so many drops of good white blood and putting them into as many nigger women as possible. The Mexicans were niggers to them. You see, all through North America, you were niggers, but they told you you were different. So you would think that you're different, but we still think people Indians, and these people are Negro, black, and color. These are Mexicans. These are Canadians, or you're all niggers to them. Crossbreeding niggers meaning taking as many drops of good white blood and putting them into as many nigger women as possible, varying the drops by the various tone that you want, and then letting them breed with each other until another cycle of color appears as you desire. What this means is that you put the nigger and the horse in a breeding pot and mix some asses and some good white blood, and what do you get? In Mexico was the mixing ground. That's where they did a lot of this at. Just to give different tones of color and different genotypes and stuff, just for their benefit while you debate about how people look, rather than dealing with just sanguinis, the right of blood or primogeniture status, and looking at things like that. You still looking at where his ears are different. He must be somebody different, calling yourself intelligent, passing it on to the other generations. You got a multiplicity of colors of ass backward, unusual niggers running tied to a backward ass, long-headed mule, the one productive of itself, the other sterile, the one constant and the other dying. We keep the nigger constant, for we may replace the mules for another tool, both mule and nigger tied to each other, neither knowing where the other came from, and neither productive for itself nor without each other. Control of the language. Crossbreeding completed. For further severance from the original beginning, we must completely annihilate the mother tongue of both the new nigger and the new mule and institute a new language that involves the new life's works of both. Language is a peculiar institution. It leads to the heart of a people. The more a foreigner knows about the language of another country, the more he is able to move through all levels of that society. Therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of that country to the extent that he knows the body of the language, to that extent is the country vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. You see why the prophet said in order to change the people, you must change their literature? Because they've layered different literatures on you as war instruments, and they've given you layers of information that's created in a false narrative. But that's the creation of your mind, because that's what you've read, and you didn't really analyze it. You just read it and made A's and B's and clapped and got a diploma and moved forward with your life. You never analyzed it. And so the slavery, as well as being a strategic war of the minds, was they had to take away your language, but also instill a new language that benefited them in its foundation, in the foundation of the language. But not saying that they're the original makers of any language. But what I'm saying to you is, if I say shawty bad, I don't mean that she gets in a lot of trouble. I'm saying to you that shawty, or the young lady, even saying shawty, you see, that's a language within itself. So not saying that you really have to do something totally different. It's about understanding the power of words, and that one word can be used as a multi-dialect language. I can say bad and mean 10 different things depending on how it's presented. You see? So that's your slavery, and that's why you must read and analyze, because the narrative that you've received was false. Even in how you look at the maps. For example, if you take a slave, if you teach him all about your language, he will know all your secrets. So they gave you the Webster Dictionary, but the whole planet is using encyclopedias, etymology dictionaries, law dictionaries. But you're using the Webster Dictionary, debating though, wanting to use that same dictionary throughout all levels of life. And that's not how it works. Person means corporation. Driving means for commercial activity. Traffic means for business enterprise. A passenger is a commodity. You think I got time to make that up? White means God, purity. Black means death. Then he must perform in getting out our crops, and he knows the language well. He would know that our crops didn't mean our crops, and the slavery system would break down. For he would relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. So you have to be careful in setting up the new language for the slaves. Will soon be in your house talking to you, man to man. And that is death to our economy and to our economic system. In addition, the definitions of words. Do you see how wild people are? Like how far we're just existing with no real reason to be here, really, but having a reason to be here. So you have to be careful in setting up the new language for the slaves would soon be in your house talking to you man to man. And that is death to our economic system. In addition, the definition of words or terms are only a minute part of the process. Values are created and transported by communication. Through the body of language, a total society has many interconnected value systems. All the values in the society have bridged of languages to connect them for orderly working in that society. But for these language bridges, these many value systems would sharply clash and cause internal strife of civil war, the degree of conflict being determined by the magnitude of the issues of relative opposing strength in whatever form. For example, if you put a slave in a hog pen and train him to live there and incorporate in him to value it as a way of life completely, the biggest problem you would have out of him is that he would worry you about provisions to keep his hog pen clean. Not even knowing he don't supposed to be in the hog pen. Not even knowing you don't supposed to pay taxes. Not even knowing you don't need a driver's license. Not even knowing that you have probably all that you need to heal yourself in your backyard. Not even knowing it. The degree of conflict being determined by the magnitude of the issues or relative opposing strength in whatever form. For example, if you put a slave in a hog pen and train him to live there and incorporate in him to value it as a way of life completely, the biggest problem you would have out of him is that he would worry you about the provisions to keep the hog pen clean. Or the same hog pen and make a slip and incorporate something in his language where he comes to value a house more than he does his hog pen. You've got a problem. He will soon be in your house. Islam, the house is North America. The house is South America. The house is your mind. You see how I just used house? But you thought it's just talking about a piece of wood made and created as a box that you go live in. Those are your problems. So I hope this video was insightful, enlightening. As we stand in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Not only love. And so sometimes it takes divine love to bring the truth. And it hurts some, but it's done through love. And so we continue to reveal to you all the art of war and what it is and what it is not. And so I read to you all the Willie Lynch formula here today to give you an idea of what the war is, and so that we can be useful in the upcoming generations to come. So, peace and love as you traverse love and light. Islam.